Hey guys, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Ankush here from Alif Consulting. Welcome in our Azure Weekly Update video. In this video, we will be going to talk about lot of Azure updates which has been released by Microsoft in last week. Well, we have, as I told you, we have a lot of update to be covered in this video as there was a Microsoft Ignite event happen in last week where Microsoft have launched a lot of services, a lot of enhancement to the Azure product. So we have 2 pages of updates which we need to cover, which we will be going to cover in this video. So let's quickly jump to the deep dive. Well, the first update which we have is from proximity placement group where Microsoft have released a feature intent. What that intent mean is where we can specify what kind of or which kind of or which SKU can be part of the placement group, right? Earlier this was not there. Now we have that feature with this PPG where we can specify only those specific SKUs of the VM will be going to be part of the PPG. And as optional, we do have a join parameter where we can specify where this PPG is going to be created. The next update which we have is for container apps. So as we know, Dapper Secret API support available with the container app. As we know, Dapper is a runtime which eventually used by container app services for running in automation way or integrating with this DevOps and GitHub accounts. So we have the Secret API available with the container apps, which allow us to do the secret management. Building blocks work with the various pluggable secret store component and remove the need of Dapper enabled container app to take direct dependency on the secret store library, right? The next update which we have is again for container app. Again, Dapper support for manage identity in the container apps. So what that means is earlier we was not having these capabilities, but now Microsoft have supported the managed identity, which means we can use the managed identity to authenticate uh, the container app with the any of other services, like where we need to use the key vaults or maybe the other services, we can directly use the managed identity for the authentication. The next update which we have is very important in terms of storage. We have now premium SSD v2. As we know, premium SSD v1 which was there is also giving us the lot of enhanced and better performance as compared to the standard storage or standard disk. But now we have the v2. With v2 we are going to get a more IOPS, more throughputs, right? V2 can give us almost 80,000 IOPS and up to 1200 of throughput in a single disk, and a single disk can be go up to 64 TB of the size, right? uh, Again, these v2 storage options can be used with the application like a SAP HANA where you need to have a more throughput on the disk and to do the read and write operations on the data or on the disk level. Next update which we have is again for Azure Stream Analytics. uh, Now Stream Analytics is supported with Azure Data Explorer output directly from Stream Analytics, which means in case of if there is any large volume of the files or the data from any resources such as a website, application, IoT, or anywhere you need to analyze, you can directly export that data to the Data Explorer, right? And again, Data Explorer is a fast and highly scalable data exploration service for log and telemetry data. It's help you to handle the many data streams by the modern software, so you can collect, store and analyze the data, right? And this data can be used for diagnostic, monitoring, reporting, machine learning and the additional analytics capabilities. Now earlier that capability was not there, but any kind of a larger volume of data where you need to do the processing, you can now directly export it to the Azure Data Explorer. The next update which we have is for Cosmos DB. Again, you can use manage identity to access the Cosmos database from Steam Analytics. Earlier that was not there, but now we have a managed identity can be used for directly authenticating from Steam Analytics to Cosmos DB to get the data. And again, why this is there, because earlier when you're using a user based authentication, it always need to be re-authenticated in every 90 days because the token is get expired. But with this managed identity, uh, this is going to be removed. You don't need to go manually authenticate with the user based identity in every 90 days. Now you can use the managed identity directly from the Azure portal for the integration. The next update which we have is Azure, user assign managed identity for Azure Steam Analytics. As we know, Steam Analytics is widely used by most of services to get the data, or to get the data or put the data to the other services. Now Azure Stream Analytics allow you to create the managed identity as a standalone Azure resource and assign it to your Stream Analytics jobs. In the case of user assign managed identity, the identity is managed separately from the resource that is used. Using the managed identity solve a common problem regarding the credential management when building the cloud application. So what that mean is, like, if you are running a multiple jobs in the Stream Analytics, you can assign a user assign or assign managed identity to the specific job to do the work. You don't need to go and you don't need to assign directly on the Steam Analytics workspace. You can have a multiple jobs. On a multiple jobs, you can use the user assign managed identity to do manage those specific jobs. Well, the another update which we have is Azure Auto Manager for virtual machine and the Arc enabled service. Now Azure Auto Manager, as we know, is generally available, right? This is completely in GA. We can create this service directly from the portal. Now, what that service is giving us, what is this service is giving us, like, it's giving us this automated configuration of virtual machine to the best practices Azure service, as well as continuous security and management operation across the entire life cycle of the virtual machine in the Azure and the hybrid environments enabled through the Azure Arc. This allows you to save the time, reduce the risk, and improve the workload uptime by automating day-to-day configuration management tasks, right? And what you can do with this auto manager feature, you can apply the enhanced backup setting and different auditing modes for compute server baselines. You can specify the custom log analytic workspace tagging to identify the resource base on the settings. It supports for Windows 10 machine, and it supports for enabling the Microsoft anti malware. So these are the capabilities which is there with Azure Auto Manager. The next update which we have is very important in terms of when you're using the AKS for hosting your containerized applications. Now we have a hybrid benefit extended to the AKS and Azure Stack HCI. What that means is, if you are running your Windows machines, right, or if you are running your Azure Kubernetes Arc enabled on the SCI, you don't need to buy the license again. If you already have your license covered with the software insurance, you can enable the hybrid benefits for your container or your nodes which is running on the Azure AKS, Azure AKS Arc enabled, and Azure Stack HCI. So in this case, you can take the advantage of your existing license and you can use those licenses into the cloud and as well as Azure Stack HCI also. The another update which we have is again for Azure DNS Private Resolver. What that mean is, again, Azure DNS we know is the service basically which is on the Azure, and that's allow us for the DNS resolution. Now we have the capability to extend this DNS service on the on-premise as well, and we can take the hybrid name resolution and the conditional forwarding directly on the on-premise DNS or from the on-premise VMs to the Azure private DNS. So that's a capability now we have available, and even it can work over the virtual network also. We can use or we can create this private resolver connected over the virtual network, and then we can extend it to the on-premise using the VPN or the express route. The next update which we have is for AKS. Now we can integrate event grid with the AKS, right? What that means is, now this allow us to directly ingest the any kind of event for any kind of task. If we are running that application in the container, or we want to run that application based on any event which has been triggered by a application, then we can integrate event grid directly with the AKS, which means if any application triggering the event grid can ingest that alert into the AKS, and the application which is running on the AKS can process the data based on that event which has been received or ingested by the event grid. Well, the next update which we have is for AKS. Again, this is the limit enhancement. Earlier we was having a limit of having maximum 1000 nodes in a one Kubernetes cluster with uptime SLA feature. Now this has been enhanced. Now we can have up to 5000 nodes scale into the Azure Kubernetes cluster. What we need to do to enhance this limit, we just need to raise a support ticket with the support team, and Microsoft support engineer will be able to enhance or extend this limit on the from the backend. Now the next update we have is again for the AKS. Now we have a support for server 2022. What that means is, uh, earlier we was only having the capability of running the server 2019 uh, from Microsoft, but now we have the capability to run the Windows Server 2022. We need to make sure we are using the Kubernetes version 1.23 or the higher version, right? But if you really want to use the older version, then you can use your Kubernetes uh, version lower to 1.25, and then you can select which operating system you want to use. So we have a both of capabilities. We have a capabilities for server 2019, and we have a capabilities for server 2020 as well, server 2020 as well. So both the capabilities now we have with the Kubernetes. The another update which we have is again for Kubernetes. Now we have a ARM based confidential VM capabilities. What that means is, we can use this ARM based confidential compute or the processor, which allow us to run the secure encryptions, virtualization, secure nesting, paging on the AKS, and this can be run or this can be done on the AKS. So let's take an example. If there is any banking organization where they want to run their confidential applications, because they are having a uh, lot of information about their customer and their personal information, that's where you can use this AMD based confidential virtual machines SKUs on the Kubernetes to host your application as a confidential virtual machine. Again, the next option again for from confidential VM option, that is extended to the Azure SQL server on the virtual machines. You just need to use your VM AMD based processor or the VM SKUs which are available for confidential VM. Apart of that, you don't need to do any kind of changes into the SQL server. No changes is required on the data schema or any kind of store procedure as well. The next update which we have is for AMD confidential VM guest attention. So this is a new thing which has been there, and this has been basically introduced with the AMD processor, and this feature called AMD SCV SNV, right? What that is do, it's allow us to verify the trustworthy good state of this of the trusted execution environment on which guest VM guest is executing. It's allow us to do features like hardware based trusted execution environment, security features like isolation, integrity, secure boots. It's allow the application deployment decisions based on the hardware state retuned by the library calls. It's allow us to do the remote attestations artifacts received from the other systems, right? Receive the recommendation and alert from the unhealthy confidential VM in the Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So this is what it's do. It's again based on the AMD processor. If we are using the confidential computing or confidential VM where we are using the AMD based processor, that's where this agent come in place and can help us to do all the security related tasks on the hardware level, on the application level, or on the VM level as well. Well, I think this has slide has been repeated one more time. Apologies for that. The next update which we have is for Azure Monitor agent support for the Windows client. What that means is now we can extend our Azure Monitor agent support for Windows 10 and Windows 11 by having the MSI installer, and those telemetries and the security events can be directly integrated with the Azure Sentinel. With this mean is any VMs which has been joined in the Azure AD or which has been joined into the hybrid Azure AD can be directly have integrated with the Azure Monitor to ingest the logs, right? What that mean is what is this mean is like where you can use your Sentinel to do the more uh, enhancement in your security, or Sentinel can understand the logs which has been coming from the VMs or from the client machine and can help you to you know analyze the logs and can give you the security recommendations for your clients also. The next update which we have is for Azure Monitor Agent migration tool. As we know, Azure Monitor Agent and the OMS agent which we are talking about is going to be end of life in August 2024, and that's where this agent migration tool can be used. It's allow us to migrate all the data or all the built-in policies or all the VMs which has been running on the legacy agents like the MMA and OMS agent, and that's where it can help us to migrate all of the VM to the newer monitoring agent. The another update which we have is for again from Azure Monitor Logs have a capability to add and lower the cost. Now it can add the more values and lower down the cost because we have a multiple ways of collecting the logs. Either we want to have the basic logs, either we want to have the log term archiving of the log, if we want to get the logs only for the search job, or if we want to have a logs for and only for restore job. That's where it can help us to lower down the cost, and we can specify what kind of log we want to get from the Azure monitoring perspective and can save our cost. The another update which we have is for Azure Stack HCI, where SCI have added a new feature. Like now customer who is on Azure Stack HCI subscription can download the latest feature release from their infrastructure. The benefit of this new features release are basically and deliver the better security performance from the customer, arc enable customer, right? Some of the key feature included like a general availability of GPU-P, network ATC to V2, and additionally for the Windows Server data center, customer with software insurance can now get Azure Stack SA at the no additional cost. So these are all the features which has been introduced with Azure Stack SCI. The another update which we have is for PostgreSQL, that Azure Cosmos DB for PostgreSQL has been introduced. So as we know, Azure Cosmos DB is the one of the data non-relational database which has been there into the cloud to store the information and the document. So Azure Cosmos DB for PostgreSQL is a fully managed distributed SQL service that allow you to build modern cloud native application at any scale. This service is built on open source PostgreSQL at the core and contains extensions to horizontal scale workloads. This components to components the existing non-SQL APIs in the Cosmos DB to provide the common data foundation for variety of application, including the multiple SaaS application, IoT, and the OLTP app. So this is the capability which has been extended to the PostgreSQL from the Cosmos DB. The another update which we have is Azure Advisor Score is now available for across the all regions. We can use our Azure Advisor scores to get the score for uh, all the reason, and we do have some of scenarios where we can specify the tag based filtering also, like if there is non-production and production tags are there. So what we can do, we can basically specify if we only want to get the advisory score for production environment or non-production environment by selecting the score, the tags, or omit the tags from the advisor console. The another update which we have is now we have a 60 MB limit per document in Cosmos DBs for MongoDB. Earlier this limit was 2 MB only, right? And that's where it was not able to store the last document, and that's where the concern was there, because 2 MB is a very small limit for storing any kind of document. With this new limit, it's provide developers to the flexibility to store more data per document, right? And with this change, you have a flexibility to create the new application that store the last document and migrate the apps that are already using the last document. This ease of use feature can help you to speed up your deployment process as well. The next update which we have is again for MySQL. So Azure Database for MySQL Flex Server now have the AMD compute. That's where we are having the more SKUs available for MySQL Flex Server. Earlier we was only having the capabilities to have the Intel based processor, but now we have options to choose either we want to go with the AMD or either we want to go with the Intel processor, right? So we have a new tiers are available, like D8 DSV 5 series, or for the business critical we have a E8 DSV 5 series, right? So both of them series are available. That's where we uh, uh, have a capability to select the processor which we need to required, and we can determine the best compute processor for the workload, and then we can deploy the instance from the Azure SQL from Azure Database for MySQL Flex Server in the increased number of availability region and the zones. The next update which we have is for Azure Service Bus. Now we have options to control the minimum TLS version will be used by the namespace. So let's take an example. You are having on a TLS 1.2, but your client is on a 1.0, and they are getting authenticated with the service bus, but there is a risk because your client was on a older version of TLS version, and that's a security risk. So that's where you can specify and you can control if there is any client version coming from the lower TLS version should not get authenticated, and their authentication will be get failed. So that's a new feature which has been there on the Azure service bus. The next update which we have is for Steam Analytics no code editor in the Event Hub. What that means is now you don't need to write any kind of code. You have the graphical visualizations to design your Steam Analytics in the Event Hub. So with this one, it's provide you the capabilities like support two new output Event Hub and the Azure Data Explorer, which is a new feature. Support built-in function of the three categories of for data manipulations in the manage field: data timing function, string functions, and the mathematic function. Add three new scenarios templates under the event hub process data. So which that means is you now no longer need to write any kind of code. You can simply do a drag and drop to manage or see your field, and that's where you can create your stream analytic process directly to ingest the data from the event hub to the any other source. The next update which we have is for service bus. Now we have a service bus explorer directly on the Azure portal. Earlier that was not there. You need to use either the Visual Studio or any other tool to manage the service bus. But now we can directly use the Azure portal, and we can use the service bus explorer feature to see our namespace, our queues, and we can manage directly from the Azure portal only. The next update which we have is for Azure Site Recovery. So with in October 2022, Microsoft have released a few new agents support with to the other operating systems. Like for the mobility agent, which is a agent run on the Windows machine or on the virtual machines to do the migration or to do the DR. For the Linux OS, Azure to Azure, Microsoft have added a support for Ubuntu 2. Ubuntu 20.04 and up to 5.5 kernel version. And for VMware and physical to Azure, Microsoft have extended a support for Ubuntu 20.04 and the kernel version should be 5.15. And for Azure to Azure, modernized VMware to Azure DR is now available and added a support for protecting the physical machines using the modernized experience, enabling the modernized experience with managed identity and endpoint tuned turned on. So these are the new features which has been uh, added with the Azure Site Recovery. The next update which we have is for Azure Monitor. Now Azure Monitor predict auto scale for the virtual machine scale set, right? So what that means is predicting the auto scale use machine learning help you to manage and scale your virtual machine scale set with workload pattern. It forecasts overall CPU load to your virtual machine skill set based on your historical CPU pattern. By observing and learning from the historical uses, it's predict the overall CPU load, ensuring the scale out occur in the time to meet the demand. What are the key features which we are going to get with this new capabilities? New virtual machine scale set instance are added when the system predict the percentage of CPU goes beyond on your scale out boundaries. Second, you can configure how far in advance you would like to add a new instance to be provisions or add a new instance into your scale set. Third, you can view predicted CPU forecast without triggering the scaling action with forecast only mode. So these are the things and the capabilities which has been added, and I think this is going to be a very game changer changing feature, because I can see or I can tell you like there is a most of the customer who always use a scale set because it's provide you to add the more instance and the capability based on the seasonality or based on the application requirement. And by having the predicted data on your auto scaling for the VM scale set, you can simplify your scaling processes, or you can simplify your overall application performance and the infrastructure as well. The next update which we have is for the private endpoint. Now we have a capability to add the customized name for network interface which has been used by a private endpoint. Earlier, it automatically get the name when we are creating a private endpoint, but we can specify our own string on the naming string when we are configuring the private endpoint. The second update which we have is again from the private endpoint. Now we have a static IP configuration of private endpoint. What that means is earlier whenever we are creating a private endpoint, it's automatically pick the IP from the subnet which we have selected, right? But now we have a capability to assign the static IP on the private endpoint. With this one, it's going to have or allow us to do the better management. Like one of the example is if you are having a private endpoint configured on your storage account and you are having the on-premise firewall, and you don't have any static IP configuration. So in case of if someone have deleted and recreated the private endpoint, it's not guaranteed like you will be going to get the same IP, right? Because it's a dynamic IP. That's where you need to rewrite your firewall rules. But by having the static IP on the private endpoint, it's going to be have always a fixed IP which you have assigned during the creation of the private IP, and it's going to allow you the better management of your network devices. The next update which we have is for Windows machines. Now we have the Windows Admin Center for Azure Virtual Machines directly available on the portal. What that means is with this one, Windows Admin Center let you manage the Windows operating system of your virtual machines natively in Azure portal. We can perform maintenance, troubleshooting tasks such as managing your files, viewing your events, monitoring your performance, getting in a browser-based RDP, PowerShell sessions, and much more within the Azure portal only. right? This is going to be reduce remote your work on remotely. You don't need to log in on the remote again and again, and it's going to be simplify your experience as you deploy and maintain the virtual machines with or without a GUI. The next update which we have is for Azure NetApp File application volume group for SAP HANA. As we know, SAP HANA required the better IOPS or the throughput from the storage, and that's where this new feature has been introduced. With this new feature of NetApp, which is a file application volume group, will shorten the SAP HANA landscape deployment time and increase the overall application performance and stability, including the use of multiple storage endpoint. The application volume group features support both a single node and multi-node standardized and optimized HANA deployment. The application volume group feature also purpose optimized sizing, standard naming convention, and include the support for both HANA system replication for high availability and Azure NetApp file cross-region replication for regional disaster recovery with storage-based replications. Well, that's it in this video. I hope you like this video. If you like, please click on like and subscribe for more upcoming videos, and feel free to reach us if you have any questions. Thank you.